Hey everybody. Welcome to Junior Developer Happy Hour, React30 edition of Junior Developer Happy Hour. And if you're here, Kiki, can you post the links again just in case people just jumped in? Kiki's put together a bunch of lists for stuff related to the meetup and stuff we're working on. So for the React30 meetup, thanks. We've been working on JavaScript 30, which is this West Boss site. If people haven't done it, he does 30 vanilla JS coding challenges in 30 days. Well, you don't have to do it in 30 days, but it would be pretty good to break it up into 30 days. Makes it more manageable. But we've been doing it in React just for fun, just to see how to do it in React. And today we're going to do the local storage, not really event delegation. That we're not really doing that in React. And the local storage part is just, it's really minimal. All we're doing, if people haven't used local storage, this is the MDN site. I post the link down here. Local storage is just a web API in the browser. I can pop it open. So if you open the dev tools under application, every site has this like local storage thing, and it's just a key value store in the browser. So you can cache values without like sending it to an external database or something. So if you want to do a to-do app or whatever, and you want to save the state when they close the browser and when they come back, it can just populate the state they were in, and you don't want to set up a backend. That's a quick and dirty way to do it. There are some limitations. You can read this page and Google it more. I think maximum it can hold is like 5 megabytes or 10 megabytes or something like that of memory. The other thing is like, you can't do like database migrations like how you do if like the schema changes when you really sync stuff to a database. So if you do like change the structure, you're gonna have to like figure out how to like blow away the person's local storage or something. So there are trade-offs to doing it. But a lot of people just use it to like cache like settings in the browser or something, stuff that is not like critical to be saved in the database. So all we're going to be using it for is to West Boss inside of this one, he made it's kind of like he adds items to a list, and then you can just like check and uncheck them, but you can't delete. You can only like add new ones. So it's a little simpler. We're not going into like deletion. We're just adding things to a list, and you can uncheck and uncheck. And then if you close the browser tab or close the whole browser and come back, then the whole list will be there again. It will save the state. But I mean, if you like open up Firefox next or Safari, because I'm using Chrome, it's not going to be there. It's saved in the browser that you are using. And it's not going to be cross devices as well. So if you're on your Chrome browser on your MacBook and you go on a different computer in your same network, it doesn't matter. The list is only going to be in that browser on that same computer that you're on. So that's some of the trade-offs to think about when you're doing local storage. Also, for people who are new here, there's actually quite a bit of people this week. So if you don't know me, I am Sam. I'm a front-end developer at a company called Strike. You can add me on LinkedIn if you want, or you can just go look and get more. If you want to see my history, I've worked at Lyft and Pivotal, Cloud Foundry, and Here Technologies, and a few other places. So that's a little bit about me. I mostly do front end. That's what we're doing. And I've been doing mostly React for like probably the past 5 years. So that's why we're doing this in React. And we usually use Code Sandbox. Let me make a new sandbox. my React one, and then I'll give everybody the link, and then we can start hacking. And at any point, if people have questions, you can just shout out your questions, or you can post it in the chat if you're shy. So that's the sandbox. If people want to actually join the sandbox and maybe even like do some parts of the exercise that we're doing, or you can just you can just watch the video. It's up to you. All right, before we get started, any questions about the meetup or what we're gonna do in general? No questions? Okay. Okay, let's look. So today I'm actually gonna copy some code from the finish because we're gonna do it totally different from him. So it doesn't matter that we're looking at the finished code because with React, we don't need, it's gonna be much simpler than the vanilla JS stuff. We don't have to worry about, it's easier to do the event listeners. We don't have to make this like template strings because we have JSX in React, and like rehydrating the local storage is much easier in React because we got hooks. So I don't know how, what level people are at in React, but there's like a use effect hook. One of the main hooks that I always use. So definitely always use state, use effect. Those are probably the most used hooks that I use. So we'll be using use effect to rehydrate the app from local storage. But yeah, so let's actually start with the CSS. That's usually what I start with. It's the easiest thing to cop over. So we just keep it simple and copy his CSS. We don't use, well, once in a while we use, just to dabble, we've done like CSS modules and styled components, but I think this week we just keep it simple and stick to global CSS styles. So just click here. So let's click, paste all that stuff. Get rid of this. Let's see. And then let's go to the starter code. Oh, I'm probably gonna need this picture, huh? Let's see. Let's see what it looks like without that picture. So what is this SVG? I don't know. I've done this exercise before, but it was a long time ago, so I don't remember. Let's see. So something's not closed correctly. Let's see.
It's the input line on 16.
Always the inputs. Something else it doesn't like. Namespace tags. Oh, what does it not like about that? Let's try to get rid of the SVG. Let's just not use the SVG. It doesn't need to be super fancy. I don't want to spend time like trying to figure out what Code Sandbox doesn't like it. It doesn't need to look super fancy. That's not the important part. So let's fix the errors first though. Class in React is, back to, I was pressing the shortcut for WebStorm, which is the IDE that I use. Johan's in the house. Oh, what's up, man? Let's see. I got an extra div here. I don't need this extra div. I like a useless div there. Okay, so right now it doesn't do anything, right? Because we gotta make this work first. So before we do any local storage and stuff like that, we gotta make this work first. So I want to try to do it a little different this week. We've been doing mostly, for people that have been coming, we've been mostly doing controlled components. So I was thinking maybe we switch it up this week because there's millions of ways to do things, right? Let's try and do it with the uncontrolled component. So let's try to play around with that. And I don't know if it's a good idea or not. We'll see. um, so first of all, we need an on submit. Since we're doing a form and we only have one input, we can do an on submit and let's just console log what comes through there. That's what I'm thinking. So like we want to handle submit, and when we click the button, that's going to be a submission of the form, and that at that point we should be adding the item to the list. And then first we'll just do it in memory, and then we'll add in the local storage stuff. So and I'll stop at each point just so we can like answer questions, or if people have other ideas, like different ways, because I don't always have the best ideas. It's just I'm just doing whatever the first things that come into my brain. So let's see. So we're gonna need to have some state. Use state. Oh, I do that almost every week for people that's been here. I always say equals there. I usually use WebStorm and it automatically imports the stuff. So I always forget what the import looks like because it usually happens automatically in my IDE. So we're gonna need items. Items. And for now, we're gonna default it to the empty array. But I think once we add in local storage, at that point, we'll default it to whatever's inside local storage so that when the component mounts, it will start hydrated with the values that we stored inside of local storage. But let's just do it in memory first, like a normal, how we usually do it. And then here we need to unsubmit. So I need like a handle submit function. So, and let's just look what comes in here. Handle submit. So first thing we're gonna need definitely is prevent default, because the default behavior of the submit event on a form, it makes the page refresh. So whenever you're working with a single page application and you don't want the page to refresh when on a submit event, you gotta prevent default.
Sam?
Yep.
Did you mean to put that on the form or on the div?
I did, thanks. Yeah, my brain is fried again. I spent all day on Twitter today. I spent hours on Twitter. And it just
Me too.
made my,
I was on Twitter too.
it just turned my brain into mush.
You know, they call that decision fatigue. You gotta think about every post you're looking at.
Is it? Maybe, yeah. I spent too many hours on Twitter today. Usually I do 2 or 3 hours, and I find that a good use of time. Actually, that might sound crazy, but I've spent more than that today, so I think I exceeded my quota. But anyway, let's console log some stuff. So I think we can get the value. I gotta remember. I think it's console log e dot target. I think you can just put the name of the thing. Let's try that.
It might be named out value, but you know.
Oh yeah. See, who is that? Was that Jesse again? You're hired.
Yo.
Okay, helping me out here. Boom! Look at that, Jesse. You're hired. Okay, so since we're doing uncontrolled components and we only have one input, that's why I'm thinking if we do controlled components, we're gonna have to like add more state and like put some refs on things and maybe not REST, we would have to have on-change handlers. And I want to try and keep it simple. So that's why I want to try and do it with just taking the value from the form. And then one other thing is like when you click it, then I want to update the state, but I also want to clear the form. So I think, let's do this. So I think we can do this just to make it a little bit more readable. I think we can do that because e.target, since the event is on the form, I should be get the event.target should be the actual form DOM node. So I can perform imperative actions on it. So there is a trade-off, right? Like React, you want to usually do everything declaratively, but I don't know, sometimes you can just do imperative actions like focus the input or clear the form is what I want to do now, which I think is reset, but let's see.
Yeah, pretty sure it's reset.
So because I don't want this to stay, right? Like when I want to add the next item, I want that thing to disappear. So when I click this, see, it disappeared. That's what this reset is doing. So that's just to start. I think let's get the array looking like how we want it to be. So I think Westboss does like each item has like default and check. Let's try look what he did.
Yeah, in the array, each item is an object with text property and done property. It's a Boolean.
Text and done. Let's do checked. Then
yeah, done seems kind of strange.
Because checked is what either way works, but my brain was already thinking checked, so let's do checked. So for people who were here last week, remember, we don't want to mutate the array. We want to make a copy. So one way that we learned last week, and if people weren't here last week, do we got the videos? Yeah, so Kiki put the link for the React Sundays videos. You can click there. Last week was, we just did reference versus copying like arrays and objects. So we're making use of what we were doing last week. So we want to do set items. In order to make a copy, we can spread the items that we already have. And then we add in the new thing, which is, what do we say? The text, and text is form dot, what is it? Item dot value, and then we'll do checked. Checked is true. So let's just console log things now to make sure things are working. Oh, thanks for the link, Kiki. So if we do, items, let's see how this works out. So we start off and there's nothing, right? Items is just an empty array. So let's see, tacos. Now we got items. Oh, let's do this. It'll be easier to read on. I do that by habit. Let me start over. Tacos. So let's look. There's one object and it's tacos check true. So it actually should be false, right? Because when you're adding to the list, it's unchecked, and then you can check and uncheck. Or let's see what he does. Maybe he does make it true from the beginning. Let's see. Checked.
It has a false very thick.
False, yeah. So let's copy what he did. So it's false. So let's refresh this. let's add a couple things, tacos, and I don't know, hummus. So we can see we added the two things. So far so good, right? That's kind of what we wanted to do. We wanted to, I'm just doing things in step. Usually this is how I build the app. I'll figure out the data part first to get the data into some kind of format that's easy to work with. And then once I get the data correctly, right now, all the data is being formatted how I want it to be so that I can easily render it. So after I get that all set up, now we can like figure out how to actually render the items on the page, which we're not doing right now. We got to replace this thing right here. But before we go on to the next part, does anybody have any questions about what we did so far? Like maybe you might have questions because we're doing it in an uncontrolled way, which we haven't done, I think, in any of the weeks so far. I think we've always done controlled components, and even in your exercise, you might have always done controlled components, but you always got to think about trade-offs because there's different ways to do it. And to me, and for what we're doing right now, I think it at least right now in my brain, it seems simpler to do it as a
I have a question, Sam.
Yeah.
So I'm not familiar with the difference between controlled and uncontrolled. I don't want you to take off too much time, but can you just briefly give me a hint on what the uncontrolled means?
Let me see. Is it in the docs? I can give you the link.
Yeah, it should be in there. Yeah.
In the docs?
Yeah, I posted it.
Let me see. Oh, you got it. So, I mean, basically, usually see how I'm not providing a value to this input. I'm letting the browser keep the value in memory, and I'm not telling it what to put into the value. When you do a controlled component, you're keeping track of the value in state and you're passing the value to the input. So it knows what to render every time it re-renders. It's going to set the value to whatever you tell it to. When it's uncontrolled, we let the browser just keep track of what the value is for the inputs and stuff like that, what in the form. And we don't need, when you do a controlled component, you also have to handle the change event. So like when the user types, that's a change event, and you got to update your state, and it's up to you to do that. But the browser does that for free. So you got to think about like, should I just let the browser manage all the state, or do I need to do fancy stuff like maybe like format the values or something? I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
So is that where I think I just realized that's where form.item.value on line 10, that's because the input, the text input has a name of item, and that's why we're doing it.
Yep. So whenever you got a form element, any of the inputs inside of the form, as long as you have a name on it, you can get the value from it by saying, as long as you have a handle to the form HTML node, you can say dot whatever the name is of the input, and then dot value to extract the value out of that node. So it might be a little difficult to do it like this. Like if you were doing like, if your form was crazy, like I've worked with like some crazy forms that are like ginormous, and that's when usually you reach for a library. Like at work right now, I'm using a library called Informed. Previous job at Lyft, I use React Hook Form, and then there are some popular other ones. Which one? What about Brian? Which one have you used?
Does Formic count?
Formic's really popular. I couldn't think of the name. I haven't used Formic, but that might be the most popular one actually.
Yeah. Formic's integration with like errors and like it's really nice.
Yeah, all the libraries are though. React Hook Form is nice.
Yeah.
Informed is nice.
I'm gonna check out Informed. I've used React hooks, form hooks.
So it just helps when you have to do like a gigantic form, but when you have a simple form, most of the time I find it easy to just use vanilla. Just work with the vanilla, like HTML and JavaScript. But yeah, somebody got their hand up.
Sam, I have a quick question.
Okay. Oh,
So
who's talking right now?
this is Jesse. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So for when you're doing set items, right? Up until that point on line 10, items seems to be undefined, and you're just adding an object to it, but who knows what it is like otherwise. Like, so is line 10 sort of a definition of sorts?
Wait, could you repeat the question again?
Defined on line 5 with the initial
think
value of
yeah.
empty array.
Use state, what's inside use state is an empty array. So we're defining items as an empty array initially.
Yeah.
And
So
then
this
on
is a
line
default
10,
value.
set items is the first time around, the spread items is empty, and we're just adding a new object to it. And then from then on out, it'll continue, it'll build on what's already in there.
Yeah. So from building on last week, this is how you can make a copy of the array. This is equivalent to like the old way of like pushing a value into array, but this way I'm making a copy of every single item in the array. And at the end of the array, I'm putting in one more item. So it's just a like terse way to like put a new thing into array and make a copy of an array.
Yeah, no, the syntax makes sense and everything. I was just thinking that like, if you're calling set items and just introducing, that the object with text and checked, like just call me crazy, what's to prevent somebody from calling set items somewhere else and throwing on an object or, just another item onto the array that's formed in a different way? I know we're not going to do that, but am I understanding correctly that like you could do that?
So I mean, if you're making a production app, you could, if you want to make it all nice, you could make a utility function that actually creates the items, and then you can write a unit test for that, or you can write like integration tests using Cypress or Puppeteer or whatever. Test Cafe is what I'm using now. So but we're just playing around, right? So I'm just doing it like right here in like one line. We're not making a production application. We're just like making it work.
Cool. All right, thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, there is nothing stopping from, if this component got large, from somebody else coming in here and putting set items somewhere else. There's nothing stopping people from doing that. Okay, somebody got their hand up?
Yeah, I did, Adam.
Okay,
Hey, so to carry on Harry's clarification for controlled for uncontrolled, I guess I want to throw out like, so for uncontrolled, it would seem like you're just relying on inputs like the form submit and all that, rather than creating a bunch of stuff to like update it. So you're basically, you're not, in this instance, right, we are just taking a bunch of data from an input and just throwing it onto a list. So this would be this, so only when it's like, when you're not worried about it, right? You're not worried about throwing it at other stuff. You're just throwing it into one place. This would be the scenario in which you would use an uncontrolled component. Is that?
I mean, there's a lot of scenarios, but
right. Yeah.
I
can't imagine.
It's just hard. Sometimes you, usually I'll just start typing and once I start working on it and be like,
right,
it's going to be better if I control this, then I'll just change the code. So like for me, I have an easier time not thinking about it too much. I just like hack and then see what it feels like. And then
once you start, I'm sure once more things come in, you're like, okay, well, now I need to rate this thing.
I find it like for me at least, I find it better not to dwell on things too much. Otherwise, you just get paralysis,
Right.
and then you end up writing no code for like half the day. I rather like try stuff out and like see what happens, and then I get ideas. Sometimes I throw away all the code I wrote like all morning, and then later on I'll just rewrite everything. But like going through all the iterations gave me all kinds of different ideas, and then I built something better. That's kind of my style that I've developed like over the years. But
That
yeah,
reminds me,
everybody.
I wrote
What is that?
I wrote a badass Markdown for GitHub, but then I, after like several hours, realized that GitHub does not accept style component or style element.
Yeah, I mean that happens all the time. Sometimes I work on something for the whole week and then realize it was a bad idea and just throw away all the code. Nothing wrong with that, as long as you eventually like as long as you eventually figure out something that works. So like I was talking about, I worked on a gigantic form at Lyft, like the biggest form I ever worked on in my life. And I actually like broke the browser, like it couldn't even render my form because it was too gigantic. And I had to figure out how to like break up the form into like some kind of fancy wizard. And I redid it 3 times before I like came up with like a solution that I liked. I like threw away all the code like twice. I like wrote the whole thing, threw it away, did it all again. And then the 3rd time I finally was like, okay, now it feels pretty good. So nothing wrong with that. You get ideas by like just going through the cycle of just trying things out.
Gotta be okay with throwing away code.
Yeah, you cannot be attached to your code. You got to detach yourself from your code and just be willing to just throw stuff away. And because as you write more code and you do PRs of other
I was
people's
gonna
stuff,
say,
and you
I'll
get
gladly take the code
ideas.
I have now than I did a year ago, right? Like,
Yeah, you're always gonna look back at your code that you previously wrote and be like, "What the hell was I thinking?"
you didn't know any better.
You're almost always gonna think that, because like as you keep coding and reviewing other people's code and watching videos of other people code, you just keep getting new ideas. And then when you look back at the code you wrote before, you're just like, what was I thinking when I wrote this? It's just normal. That's just how it is. Okay, any other questions before we go on? I think we're gonna need like the taco too. So I don't know, let's see what else we need to get the things on the list. So we're gonna need this li. We're gonna have to change it a little bit. So we're gonna do it like this. And then let's say item, or what is it? I'm gonna destructure it. Sorry, sometimes we mob program together, but like today, there's a lot to go through, so I'm kind of just driving today. This, like if you watch the video, this video is like 30 minutes long, I think. It is like a long one. So text check.
I was recently blindly using local storage to implement like JWT, and like I barely understood what I was doing. So anything I can glean from this is going to be appreciated.
Okay. Let's see, what is my syntax error? Quoted text. Oh, I got this. So that. What does anybody see? So this is not correct. This in React, you can actually have a checked prop, I believe, on checkboxes. So there's that. See, I don't. So we don't need this data index, I don't think. So one more thing. And I also want to add an ID onto this. So I wanted to use a library called UUID, just to make sure, like we could use the index, but like say you wanted to expand on this and you wanted to add in deletion of the items, the index is not gonna work. Because like when you delete one, if it was at index 4, say, then you delete it and you add another one, there's gonna be a new thing at index 4, and that doesn't really work that well. So there's a library called UUID that people use a lot. Lodash also has like a janky like ID creator. This one is more robust. Like you can get these like real UUIDs. So I want to just copy this. Just bring it in. So the awesome thing about Code Sandbox, you can just click the button and it just installs the dependency. So got that. And then to make a UUID, you just call this function. So whenever we add it, there's a UUID. And then ID here. So the ID, we're gonna just destructure the ID.
Hey, I just have a question. Okay, instead of the UUID, some library you're using, right? Can you use the inbuilt random? We have some random integer generator, right? Something like that. Do you think we can use that, or is that a reason we are using UUID?
Which function are you talking about?
There is a random number generator function. So
you just create a function that creates a random number, or like something.
Yeah,
right?
no, it's it's kind of inbuilt. Yeah, we don't even
random.
have to create it.
Yeah, but it's not gonna be as good as this.
You want something
this is truly a unique number that like it's almost statistically impossible to create like another.
You want
if you make your own like random ID, it's not gonna be. I'm pretty sure it's not gonna be guaranteed to like create a unique ID. And this follows like a spec that
in the docs for like JavaScript and like even Python, it's pseudo random. So it's not it's not real random.
So if you want to read
like a real random,
what you want is preventing collisions among objects. So you don't want two items with the same ID appears just out of random chance. So if your random generator isn't good enough or doesn't have enough space in it, it will definitely create a collision which cause your phone to have problem.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, this library is good. I mean, it has like 50 million downloads a week. There's a reason it has 50 million downloads a week. Because it's what mostly everybody uses to generate unique.
So this library doesn't need a reference. Like it's not auto incrementing anything. It's not hashing or encrypting a number. It's just giving you a random UUID.
Yeah.
Or a brand new one.
I mean, I don't know how it creates it. Maybe it's doing that behind the scenes. I never really looked. I never went deep into the spec or the source code to see how they're doing it. So they might be doing what you're talking about behind the scenes, but I don't know how they do it. But
if you're not, I mean, it seems like if you're just calling a function with no inputs.
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, we're not doing this for production, so we could have made our own random ID generator. It doesn't matter too much. Like, who cares? But I just wanted to show you this library because I use it a lot. So we're putting that on. Now we're saying ID. We can use that for the key as well.
Just an FYI, Postgres, you can use UUID with Postgres too. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Is built into Postgres, right? I don't know. I haven't done
Yeah,
Postgres.
yeah, it's a data type. Yeah.
Let's see. So let's see what we got so far. Okay, HTML4. I always forget that one. So React doesn't allow you to put 4 there, or it doesn't like it. It's just, it still works, but it gives you a warning. So
The one that $sign in the label.
oh yeah, how's that coming there? Oh, that good call. Checked. Oh, so for the checkbox, what is it saying? This will read only. Let's just leave that. Let's see. So, oh yeah. So we're gonna need a on-change handler for the checkbox input, because when you click it, we're gonna need to like uncheck and check that value. Like right now it's false. We need to set it to true. So this is warning us about that. So we do need a handler for that part. Let's see. So we need handle, or let's just call it toggle checkbox, and then we can just do ID, I guess. So we'll do is it on? Was it on change? Does anybody know? I forget. For checkboxes, it's on change, right?
I think that should work.
Oops.
I think any state change would work for on change.
So let's just console log it for now. That's what I always do, like first. So I got the ID. So now that I have the ID, I can like look for it inside the items, and I can like change the value of it. So we can do this. And in the sake of time, we're probably going to skip the fancy stuff that he has. I think he has it as a taco. We'll see if we get to that. Let's just try to get it checked first. Maybe we'll just use a green square instead of the tacos. We don't have all the fancy background either. So, so now we're going to set items again. What we're going to do is we're going to do items dot map, and then we're going to say item, and then if the ID matches, item ID equals ID, then we're gonna toggle the value. If not, we'll just return the item. So we'll do checked equals. Okay, let's see if that works. Oh, we get the taco. I thought that was the image. He just used the emoji. That's why it worked. It's not an actual like picture. So if you look inside of his styles, he talks about in a video how he like makes these fancy like taco checkboxes. It's just some CSS. And if you know Wes Boss, if you watched a bunch of his videos, he loves using like emojis like in his like things, which makes it fun too. I don't know if you'd really do that in your app. If it was like I've never actually used emojis in like production apps that I worked on at work, but might just be the types of companies I worked at. If you're working at BuzzFeed or something, maybe you got emojis all over the place. Let's see.
They probably have emojis as class names.
Probably. Actually, at Lyft, we did emoji-driven development. That's actually what we called our style of how we did PRs and stuff. To do PRs, to like ask somebody to look at it, you put like the eyeballs like emoji, and somebody who made the infrastructure made it like ping the people who you like wanted it to look at it, and like to merge the PR, you put a rocket. So they called it emoji-driven development. So far so good. So let's stop again for questions before we add in the, because all we got left is the local storage, right? Like right now, if I check these and refresh, it's just gonna disappear, right? Because we, like all the items just disappeared. The whole purpose of doing the local storage is when I refresh the page, the items are still there. So I think that's all we got left. So let's stop for questions before we finally get to the local storage. I told you it was only going to be a little part of the exercise. This whole thing was more about making this, like just explaining all the different like forms and stuff. Like it's good to keep revisiting forms, because if you're a front-end developer, you're going to work with, in your career, you're just going to work with a million forms, most likely. Like all the time, you're going to be doing all these different kinds of forms. I worked with a lot of different forms, at least. Anybody have questions before we do the local storage? Oh, somebody asked a question I missed. Actually, will you run into any accessibility issues when using emojis? I don't know, but you usually, to catch accessibility issues, it's hard to manually catch accessibility issues or think of like every single accessibility. Usually you install tools that just warn you. You know how you have linters and stuff like that, that just, it will like tell you when you're being a dummy and you're not being
Also,
very accessible. Huh?
What to put on the,
What'd you say?
it's design's job to do, to check accessibility.
It's the design's job. Well, it's everybody.
What if you're
it's
a team of
everybody's
one?
job.
What if you're a team of
Yeah, so it's everybody's
have
job.
this.
So that's really hard. So it's all about tools. For accessibility, for anything, is you rely on tools to,
Let the computer do it.
yeah. So you don't have to think about it. Your job as a developer, most of your brain thought should be going into like, how do I implement this business logic that I need to build so that my company can survive, like actually make money, or if it's a nonprofit, that it can actually help people. Or your main thought should just be like, how do I make the app? I don't have to worry. I don't want to have to think about all that stuff. I mean, you should think about it, but most of your brain power should be like trying to like architect the app. I think as you get higher and higher, maybe as junior developer, you won't have to do that as much. You'll just get a ticket from the PM and they'll just tell you what to do. But if you go work at a small startup, it's most likely not going to be like that. Like it's all hands on deck at a small startup. You got to just figure stuff out. And my first full-time job was, I was the first engineer at a startup. So I had to figure out all kinds of stuff. And I felt like I got better really fast because of that, because I was just thrown in the water and I had to like figure out how to swim. So my apps were probably not accessible at all because I was just trying to get stuff to work. But yeah. Okay, somebody posted a tool for accessibility. There's tons of tools. There's courses on front-end masters, and accessibility is hard. So that can even be your niche, you know, like if you wanna like So it's going to take time when you're beginning. There's so many different rabbit holes that you want to go down, and like you're like, oh, should I do front end or should I do back end? Then you finally figure out if you want to do front end, but then there's a million things to like specialize in front end. You can find a niche and get really good at that thing. Then that might be, you just look for jobs that are looking for people who are really good at accessibility and stuff like that. That's one way to do it. So any other questions before we do the local storage? Man, we got a big group today. What's going on? Everybody was interested in local storage for the 5 minutes of local storage. Maybe that was false advertising on the meetup. That's what West Boss called the exercise, though. So, okay, more accessibility tools. Also, yeah, just you guys, if you want to, in the Slack, anybody can make channels. You can make an accessibility channel if you really are into that stuff.
And I'm making a emoji only chat.
You can make whatever your heart
Sweet.
desires.
Sweet.
Okay. No more questions. Should we do the local storage? Use Wingding. Just use the Giphy API to post a meme when you like check it. Snoop Dogg checkboxes for people who were here a few weeks ago when we did the Snoop Dogg Giphy thing. Konami Code Week. You can go back and watch the video if you weren't here. Okay, what we're gonna do now. So let's keep it simple. There's like different ways you could do this, right? Like we definitely have to hydrate it when the app loads, and I think we can do that right here. But you also have to think about, when do you want to like store the things in local storage? You can either do it every time you add an item, or when the component unmounts, you could also just do it then. So 2 different ways. I say we just do it when we add it, just because we can just put it right here. I think that will work. Shrug emoji in the chat. I actually have a shortcut on my MacBook where I type shrug in tab and then it puts the shrug emoji, because I used to always Google to get the shrug emoji, because if your company Slack doesn't have like shrug emojis or strong emoji game, that's red flag in my book. I like run from that company. Your company gotta have strong emoji game in the Slack. Otherwise, that's red flag, like not a fun place to work in, in my opinion.
All of my keyboard shortcuts are bound across the devices. So I get it on my iPhone, I get it on my MacBook.
See, Brian's the hacker, man. He just makes all kinds of stuff.
Consistency.
Automates everything. Let's see. So we could do local storage. So again, we could abstract this and make a separate function, but we're not making a production app. We're just going to make it work. So we're just going to do the local storage inline right here. But if you do make a production app, you want to think about these kind of things, because like I said, you want to make it easy to test and stuff like that. So you would most likely have a different module that was like for saving to local storage. Actually, we can make it, we'll be a little good. Let's just make a function outside called save. So that save, let's call it save items. So that it's not like super janky. So inside save, we'll just do set, we'll get the item, set item, and then,
So accessing local storage is global.
Yes, it's on the window. So you see window.localstorage.
JavaScript, well, through the browser directly.
Yeah, so I can demonstrate here before we do it in the app. So right now you see an MDN that popped up in the application. I could add it right here, but let me show you how I do it with JavaScript. So I just do local storage dot set item test. So I'm gonna store an item in local storage with the key test with the value of test. So if I do that and I go back and look in local storage, now there's test in there. And then if I just type local storage, I can see it shows me I have these two things. So, but in order to, can you just call test? Yeah, no. So the browser never, I don't think it used to do this before. Now it shows you in an easy readable format what the object looks like. But to get it, you actually got to call get item. And then you got to give it the key. And then when you store stuff in local storage, you got to remember to stringify it, because the values inside of, like if you go look on Google, there's all kinds of stuff in there. So I looked at Google today just to see what they put in local storage, and they cache all kinds of stuff. So be careful if you're on somebody else's computer. Somebody could pop open local storage and they could see what you were searching and stuff like that, because I think it shows like your most recent searches and stuff like that. They put all these weird keys on, but like it also, see, I was looking up Tulsa COVID numbers because I live in Tulsa. Just want to see what direction is trending. So yeah, there's all kinds of stuff in here. There might be stuff you don't want people to see. So if you're on somebody else's computer, maybe make sure you use incognito Google or something like that, because they're tracking all kinds of stuff. And somebody could just pop this open and go, look, what were they searching on my computer? They can just look it up right here.
So Sam, if our app can, or if your app on your computer can access, all of local storage, does that mean any app or web app that you load onto your computer can read all of your local storage?
No, see, it's scoped to the domain.
Oh,
So
okay. Good.
Okay, you only get, that's why when it came to Google, I had all this, but then on MDN, I don't have all that, right? I only have the local storage from MDN. So every domain, I think, gets like 5 or 10 megabytes of storage. And the only way it gets cleared is you got to call localstorage.clear. That's why you got to be careful when you use local storage, because it's not like the database where you can just blow away the database or run migrations on the data whenever you want. Local storage, it's in the control of the user, the client. So it's harder to like figure out ways how, if you need to change the shape, like if we decided to like change the shape of the items, that gets a little bit more tricky, right? Because like we're gonna hydrate it from local storage, and if the shape changed, that might like break the app. So you gotta be careful when you use local storage. So let's do items, and then we can do JSON stringify items. So since it has to be a string, we can't just put the array object in local storage, right? So we gotta call local storage.save items. We're gonna do, let's make a function for rehydrating it too. I'll just call it get items.
Is hydrate a common term?
I don't know. Redux uses that, right? I don't know. I just copy names from like libraries because I can't think of names.
It's the best way to do it.
So we'll do, if it exists, then we'll do that. If not, we'll give it an empty array. So let's do that. Right now it should be empty because there's nothing. So let's try save, oh, I did this wrong, because when we get it, it's going to be a string, right? So we have to we have to parse it. Oh, so let's do this. Items equals. Oh, what is it saying? Oh, what did I do wrong? JSON, it doesn't like what I typed there. Oh, what did I do? Oh, let's see. What is it not like about this JSON.parse?
My question is, what does the
Oh.
double question mark do?
That's saying if it doesn't, this is knowledge coalescing. So if it's null or undefined, it will return empty bracket. So
Opposed to the
let's see
ternary operator, right? The question mark with an option. If it's true, it comes the first option and the colon and the section option. And it's like the if else. So this is just if.
No, this is just checking if it's null. If it's null,
Oh, the null. Oh, yeah, I got you. Okay.
Yeah, because I've used double and. Double and will get you if
double
it's
and
true.
will, it's false first turn, so it will be returning false. You cannot do that.
Right.
okay, so get item returns null if the key doesn't exist. So we can call JSON.parse on it. So we can simplify it like how I had it.
So that sign is better than or. You might be thinking about double bar with the or, but with or, if the first turn is 0, it will still return the second turn. But this one only returns the second turn if the first turn is nil or undefined.
Yeah,
so it will return 0 if the first one's 0.
So it's a newer feature. It just came out maybe like a year or two ago or something like that.
Yeah, it's on PHP previously.
Yeah, it's just called knowledge coalescing. So if you gotta do like old browser support, just make sure you're when you're bundling it, like whatever your bundler is, it transpiles it as far back as you need. You want to make sure you test in whatever browsers that you gotta support. For me, I only gotta support new browsers, so it doesn't matter. I just use all the new features. I don't even really look at if my bundler's producing the right code. Okay, so now it's hydrating it. We gotta also save the items. So let's see if this works. Let's put it in a variable so that we can do both things. Update items equals, and we're gonna save it in memory, and we're gonna cache it in local storage. And we'll see if this works or not. So let's do tacos. Okay, I'm gonna refresh now. Boom, tacos is still there. What else can we do? French fries. And let's check tacos. Because you gotta have tacos, right? And it didn't save it, how come? Because when you toggle it, we also gotta cache it. So now I'm thinking we could add save items to here too, or we can just save it when the app unmounts. We're a little past 9, but hopefully people like experimenting because I like experimenting. So we'll do a little experiment, and if it doesn't turn out good, then I'll just add another save items here. But me, I only want to save items once, so I'm gonna go with the other way that I was talking about, how we could do it, or one other way. So we can do use effect, and then when the app unmounts, then we can sync it to local storage. So you can do, when you do return, that's the cleanup function in use effect. So since I put an empty depths argument here, this use effect only runs on mount when the component mounts and when it unmounts. And I'm gonna do nothing when it mounts, but when it unmounts, I'm gonna try to sync it to local storage. So I'm gonna say save items, and then we'll see if that works.
So you're saying when when the component mounts, it won't run the return statement?
No.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. So it is complaining though, because I'm using items in here. So that can you can run into stale closure bugs. I don't want to go into that whole thing. I don't know how to explain that super well in the first place, and I don't want to be here all night. So we'll just say whenever the items changes. So instead of when the component unmounts, this is actually going to run every time the items array changes. So I think that happens every time. Every time we add a new thing, also when you toggle the checkbox, because we call set items, and we're always copying the array and making a new array. So every time it's a new array, it should be saving the items. So whenever items get updated, if this works correctly, it should be saving the item. So instead of doing the return, like my original idea, we're gonna say every time the items change, we're gonna sync it, because that works too. And I like it better because I don't have to put save items here and save items here, which could lead to more bugs, because now you put it in multiple places. Now if you ever you might forget if you delete one, or so I rather have it just in one place. So let's see if the toggling works now. Voila, it worked. Let's add something else just to, what else do we have for tapo? Oh, we had hummus before it. Well, that's like a normal tapas. Let's check hummus.
Need some guac.
Boom, let's only eat hummus. Okay, now we can go into questions. I kind of did that super fast, so I can answer your questions if you have any questions about anything that we did, or yeah, any questions? No. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I'm reading over the code.
Oh. Yeah, and I usually make a better permalink after we stop the video, and then I post that link in the Slack and also on the meetup. I posted in both places, so I'll give you the permalink after we're done. Or you can also just fork it right now if you want to just have it your own copy to like just tinker around with. But yeah, any questions about this? We can do questions about this. I can stick around a little bit more, because otherwise I would just go back on Twitter, and I already spent the whole freaking day on Twitter. It was a very eventful day on Twitter. It was actually really fun. Some days they're just like angry people. Today was there's a lot of.
My feed was very angry people today.
Oh yeah, not mine. There was angry people. There's always angry people on Twitter, but you gotta learn how to filter that noise out.
Yeah, most of everyone that I'm following are still like developers, but like there's people who are just mad at people.
Yeah, we're in the fourth turning. If people never read that book, Fourth Turning, I'm reading that now. And we're in the fourth turning. There's like these cycles that we go through. There's like 4 major cycles, and we're in the crisis cycle now, which is the fourth turning. And it's kind of crazy how accurate the book is. It describes all the generations and why the generations like have so much conflict, like between the boomers and the millennials and stuff like that. Interesting book. I'm going through it kind of slowly though. It's not a super easy read because a lot of it is repetitive. They keep driving home this thing about like the different turnings. But at least as long as I can live to old age, I should be able to live in I think the next turning, the first turning is like the good one. It's like the awakening or something like that.
How long do we have to wait?
They don't, I mean, it's not super accurate. It doesn't say exact, the turnings are like usually around like, each cycle is about 20, 25 years, I think. So the fourth turning ends with some major kind of crisis, and it's predicted to happen around like 2025, like mid decade, this mid decade. So to me, I think that's just going to be a new financial system. I mean, I work in Bitcoin, so I really think that's going to be underpinning a major part of the new financial system. I mean, my company builds the whole infrastructure on Bitcoin. So
I thought a ecological collapse would have happened already by now, so I'm still waiting for that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be
4 more years.
It usually fourth turning, according to the book, is usually like some like a war or something like that, and then that like destroys all the old institutions, and then the next turning is when we rebuild all the institutions, but we build new institutions, and then people gain confidence again in institutions. Right now, like everybody is like their confidence is like at all-time low, right? Of like all of
I mean, 2025 is when the next president is coming in.
Yeah, so, I mean,
there's gonna be some.
They don't predict it exactly.
Please,
they
please
just
don't make me think about that kind of stuff.
They just go through the history for like hundreds of years, and it just shows how it's kind of like how we have seasons, like spring, summer, autumn, fall. It also works like that on a bigger scale. Like the world goes through these turnings. Interesting book. It's called The Fourth Turning. But I actually like The Sovereign Individual better. I read that book before this one. They kind of go together. And they predicted it's like they're time travelers. It's crazy. Like they predicted like everything that's happening like 20 years ago. 1997, I think they wrote that book. And it's kind of crazy how accurate all their predictions were.
What's that one called?
It's called The Sovereign Individual. I can get the link. Yeah. Just warning, if you're like doing a boot camp and stuff, these kind of rabbit holes might like detour you from learning all the stuff that you already got to learn. So you might want to might want to just especially if you're in a boot camp, do not read any of these books that I'm talking about. You don't have time.
What if you're about to be done with the boot camp, like me?
If you want to take a break, then yeah. But this is more when you have more free time. Any other questions? No questions? We got so many people here today. People just shy.
The only thing that comes to my mind is so there's a getter and a setter for storage items, and then there's the clear that you mentioned. Are there any other methods that can work on it?
Those are the only ones that I use. I
You can
think that's
just
the
check
only one.
the documentation and Windows stuff.
Let's see. Set item, get item. Oh, remove.
So you
item,
can get history and stuff on there.
get
I
history.
guess you can remove a single item instead of everything. But I have I guess a question for everybody is, what have you used local storage for? I've only been using local storage as a way to save a logged in user.
Same here.
Okay.
So I've used it to pre-cache things. I'll make like a request up front and then save the future data and then paginate from the local storage to improve in performance, to make it seem like snappier. But that's, yeah, that's,
Yeah.
I've done users and or like basic user information, but
Personally, I don't use it unless I have to. So I'll try and stay away from it. Unless I'm not working on a production app and I'm just making like a to-do app or something. And I haven't worked with databases in years, so I wouldn't want to make a database if I was just playing around. I would just use the local storage from my database, or I would just use some kind of easy to use out of the box thing. I don't want to like make a schema and migrations and all that stuff. that I'm out of those days. I started out full stock, but I've done mostly only front end for a long time now. So I don't really touch the database.
Another question for you, Sam, is a project I'm working on right now is just kind of a clone e-commerce site, and me and my partner we're planning on using local storage as our cart for a user, and then like on logout, or I think just on logout, we'll actually save it to the database so that we're able to transfer the cart between devices and browsers. Is that something that's kind of normal?
Yeah, maybe.
What happens if the session expires, the cookie expires, the user login?
Yeah, so you got to think about that kind of stuff. There's also session storage. So if you want to look, session storage is similar to local storage, but like it's more ephemeral. So like if I close the tab, session storage gets cleared. It's not, but like
it's
when
kind
I
of the pro
but
local storage.
It's a little
Local
safer
storage
than it's a little safer
infinite.
than local storage, because session storage, when you refresh the page, it will save. It's like caching the data, but then if you close the tab, it wipes it out. So I like that better. It's a little safer, but some things like if you want to keep the user logged in and stuff like that, it might make sense for local storage, depending if you're using some kind of JSON web tokens or something.
Okay.
Alex has his hand up.
Yes,
Alex.
part of the beginner question, but is there any pattern to which functions need to be written with full function syntax and which need to be written as arrow functions?
Could you repeat that again? What about are you talking about how I wrote this like function rather than the arrow function? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, I noticed most functions in this app are written as arrow functions, but a few are written with the function keyword. Is there any reason for either of those?
There are nuances. But depending on your level, like there's like hoisting going on, but like I didn't take into account any of that. Like for what we're doing here, it wouldn't really matter if I use the arrow or the function. I use either one. It depends on your team. Usually your team will have like a preference just so the code base looks the same. But you'll notice if you go through code bases, even though if you have like a convention that you should always use arrow functions, you'll probably still see like functions like this. Stuff slips in like that. Because most of the time it doesn't matter too much. Like the way that we write JavaScript nowadays, like we write more functional JavaScript nowadays. In the past, there was more object-oriented ones, and then there's issues when people used to use a this keyword all the time, and then the arrow function has some you got to think about when you're using the arrow functions and what this is going to be inside of that function. But I don't want to go into that because we don't really use this anymore. I don't use it. I don't know when the last time I used this keyword. I'd rather just forget that ever existed.
And apart from brevity, you would always want to use an arrow function if you deliberately did not want hoisting, correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because if you do this function, it's gonna hoist it the top. I don't remember. I haven't thought about hoisting and stuff in a long time. JavaScript's a lot easier now than it was when I first started. You don't have to think about a lot of those kind of things as much. Any other questions?
No, I just lowered my hand a bit too late. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap it up then if there's no more questions. I forget what next week is, but I should be back here again next Sunday. So far, we haven't missed a Sunday. We can look what next week is. Where is it? Text shadow, mouse move effects, more CSS kind of stuff. Okay. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing, and I guess I'll see everybody next week then.
Hey, Sam,
Hey,
thanks.
Thanks so much, Sam.
Yeah, thanks for doing this,
Right.
Sam. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam.
All right, later.
Thanks, Sam.
Bye.